Pokemon Paradox Rift drops here in the States in just a very short 3 weeks, if you can believe it. I barely can. It feels like we just got 151. It's a good set. It's doing stuff. But forget about all that. The grind never ends. New Pokemon set dropping, and that's where we come in. Today we're going to look at the top 10 cards from Paradox Rift. Now, quick note before we get started here, I gotta say, this is a huge set comprised of 4 smaller sets from Japan that we're going to get bundled all into one big set over here in our neck of the woods. So there are a lot of very powerful cards in this thing, and it was kind of tough to whittle it down to 10. Making this list was harder than early 90s Ice Cube, which is made even more difficult by the fact that I'm softer than late 2000s Ice Cube. So this was a tough one to put together, but I think we nailed it in the end. Let's go. Now, as usual, we'll start with the honorable mentions here, and I pluralize that because I have to talk about 4 different cards in this section, but they're all the same kind of card. I wanted to put a little spotlight on these TMs that we got in this set because they all look pretty cool. Not every one of them looks as good as the last. Some of these are definitely better than others, but they all definitely have applications in different situations. So let's look at all of them in the order in which I like them. I'm pretty sure that's proper English. But the first one would be TM Turbo Energize. I believe these are all tools, and they all say this first line of text. The Pokemon this card is attached to can use the attack on this card. You, of course, still need the necessary energy to use the attack. If this card is attached to one of your Pokemon, discard it at the end of your turn. So with all of these TMs, you get precisely 1 turn with the TM on your Pokemon before it's gone. With this one, you can pay a single colorless energy to use Turbo Energize. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, attach them to your benched Pokemon any way you like, then shuffle. So really cool little attack here that you might use, especially early in the game if you go second or something like that. I could see this being pretty decent. Again, not the best of these, but if they only get better from here, that means they're all pretty good because this is okay. There's also TMs for Devolution and Evolution. These are what they sound like. The one for Devolution is a single colorless. For Devolution, devolve each of your opponent's evolved Pokemon by putting the highest stage evolution card on it into your opponent's hand. Every single one of them. It's kind of really, really neat against a few different decks in the format right now. There's a bunch of stuff that uses evolved Pokemon, and I imagine that if you're getting, 2 or 3 cards off the table this way, then that's a pretty good use of the card, but obviously they can just, replay them, so I'm not sure how great it actually is, but it's a neat effect. Evolution is the opposite of that. For a single colorless, you can choose up to 2 of your benched Pokemon. For each of those Pokemon, search your deck for a Pokemon that evolves from it. Put it on that Pokemon to evolve it, shuffle your deck. This is obviously busted. This really seems fantastic. And Charizard decks that also play like Pidgeot EX and even like Gardevoir decks and stuff like that. I could definitely see this being ridiculous. Again, in multiple things right now that need to evolve their Pokemon. This kind of looks absolutely sick. On turn 1, if you're attacking going second. So again, this can get you set up very nicely. But maybe my favorite of these TMs is Blindside. This kind of looks normal, but I actually think this card is very tricky, very, very good. Again, it's a tool just like all the other ones. You discard it at end of turn and all that. But for this one, for 3 colorless, you can use Blindside. This attack does 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So you can hit the bench with literally any Pokemon that you have in your active, so long as it has the 3 energy on it, to use the Blindside attack. 100 damage to something that already has energy or damage on it isn't always going to kill whatever you're targeting with it, but it's going to kill it a good bit of the time. 100 damage is an awful lot, and getting damage counters on stuff is not hard. Obviously, you can just hit something and your opponent retreats it or switches it out or whatever, but very often you can just use things like Hawlucha, for instance, to put damage counters on stuff, and then just kill that Sableye off the bench, kill that Cramorant off the bench, kill that Comfey off the bench. I know this whole example has been against Lost Zone box, but that is the deck that has the most, susceptible stuff to a card like this. So I think this is actually really sweet. 3 energy is a relatively high requirement, but being able to hit anything on the board basically out of nowhere is a pretty cool trick to have access to. So I'd keep my eye on this. But let's go ahead and move on to the actual list. I spent way too long on those TMs, but that said, I'm going to cheat for number 10 as well and show you a couple of different cards. But again, they're the same kind of cards, and it's the last time I'm going to cheat for the entire list, so indulge me one time. twice really in this one video, but still, let's talk about the booster energy capsules for number 10 here. They both look pretty good. I like one more than the other, but they both look pretty good. Ancient booster energy capsule is a tool. It says the ancient Pokemon this card is attached to gets plus 60 HP, recovers from all special conditions, and can't be affected by any special conditions. So nice little gravy there on the end, not being able to be confused, paralyzed, sleep, whatever, poison, whatever. But I do like the plus 60 HP. That is actually a pretty big boost for your ancient Pokemon. Now, there aren't a whole lot of ancient Pokemon that I really like in this set. And that is one of the things influencing my decision to like future booster energy caps a little bit more, but I honestly think it's just a better booster anyway. The future Pokemon this card is attached to has no retreat cost. The attacks it uses do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. I think both of these boons are just better. Both of them, right? Special conditions aren't that big of a deal, right? And HP is good and all. I like a Bravery Charm more than most people do. I was going to say as much as the next guy, but I think I like Bravery Charm more than most people do. That said, I always want to do more damage, and no retreat cost is basically always better than you think it's going to be. So that said too, I should point out that there are future Pokemon I really like in this set, some of which will be on this list as we move forward. So I think this has more uses and is just overall a better card. Just a fantastic tool this thing is. Here at number 9, let's just take a look at Medical Energy for a second. Just simple and beautiful. What a good Pokemon card. As long as this card's attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless energy. When you attach this card from your hand to one of your Pokemon, heal 30 damage from that Pokemon. Super good. I don't think it's going to see play in everything, obviously, but there's a colorless deck that's kind of coming along. It got a couple of cards in this set, a couple of cards in the last one, that Wigglytuff. Like it's a million HP if it's got the special energy attached to it. Seems okay, right? So I think this is neat in, again, just a few different piles in Standard right now. There are decks like Lugia, for instance, that might be able to make use of a card like this pretty easily. You know, special energy decks are probably going to play at least a one of Medical Energy, if not more. I mean, this is a pretty neat little thing to be able to do. Healing's not a big deal. It's not one of the better things. It's actually one of the worst things you can do in Pokemon compared to all the other stuff you could be doing some of the time. But that said, this is more or less a free heal that comes with an energy attachment, which is something you're going to want to do anyway. So I just really, really like this. I don't like it enough for it to be like in the top 5, but I do think it's a card that's going to see play pretty definitely. Pretty definitely. Wow, I've been on YouTube for 8 years, so I know YouTube speak, especially when it comes out of my own mouth. That is probably my way of covering my own butt in case the card isn't very good. Pretty definitely. Almost certainly. Yeah, it's funny words, bud. But let's move on to number 8 here. It's Mewtwo EX. That's right, it's a Pokemon on the Pokemon list. Feels like it took long enough. What are we, 10 minutes into this video already? But yeah. Honest to God Pokemon here. This is a basic EX with 230 HP. That ain't bad. It has a single psychic energy. You can do Transcharge. Attach up to 2 basic psychic energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way you like. You can also do Photon Kinesis for 2 psychic energy. This is 10 plus damage. It does 30 more damage for each psychic energy attached to all of your Pokemon. And Mewtwo EX retreats for 2 colorless. So these are decent attacks and a pretty decent starting HP too. You know, 230 ain't nothing to laugh at or sneeze at, or any of the things you could do at this card that are ill-advised to do. The first attack is okay. For a single energy, you can attach Pokemon energy to your Pokemon any way you want to. So any of your Pokemon, you can split it, you can put it all on one Pokemon, whatever. 2 energy isn't too bad. Again, going second, attacking first, not terrible. And, you know, in the Guardy deck, so this might want to go in as like a one of or something like that. There's going to be psychic energy in your discard pile. It's the whole point of the deck is to put it there and then get it out with Gardevoir later. So this kind of helps you do that. It sucks up an attack, but that can be fine depending on what stage of the game you're in. Now, the second attack only costs 2 psychic energy, and there is something to be said here, right? In that Charizard just completely bodies your entire deck, right? It just kills all your psychic guys. This is not weak to Charizard, so it's got that going for it. And if you have all 10 of your psychic energy attached to your guys, which is actually a situation I have been in Gardevoir more than once. It is not super uncommon to have all of your energy on the table at one time. This does 310 damage to a fresh Charizard. Interesting to note, if nothing else. Just a cool little line there. But, you know, even if you've got like 6 of your energy attached, it still does a buttload of damage, enough to take most things out. So I think that this is probably a pretty decent like one of Guardy, but I'm not sure it's actually going to make the cut. That said, I think it's just obviously a decent Pokemon with good HP stats and a decent attack. Now up next at number 7 is Jirachi. If this card is number 7, this is a really good set. I think this card is going to see play in tons of decks. Most of them, like all of the decks. Jirachi is 70 HP for a basic. He's got this ability, Stellar Veil. Prevent all damage counters from being placed on your benched Pokemon by effects of attacks used by your opponent's basic Pokemon. It's also got this attack. For a single colorless, you can charge energy. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, shuffle your deck. And Jirachi retreats for a single colorless. That's not too bad. I like this more than Manaphy in most things. in most things, this is really good against Sableye, pretty obviously, and that's kind of all you really have to say about it for it to be a playable card in almost every deck in Standard. I also like that, unlike Manaphy, it's got an attack that you actually want to use some of the time. If you have to put it up there in active, you got nothing else to do with it, it's going to die, whatever. 2 basic energy cards in your hand could be a lot worse. I don't know that I've ever attacked with a Manaphy in my life. Ever. But there are, what are there, 4% possibility in situations, extreme edge cases where you actually kind of want to attack with the Jirachi. So I don't know. I think that this is just a obvious standard, staple at this point, but I could be wrong. I really don't think I am. The card looks phenomenal, but so do all of the cards in the set, to be honest. This list could be basically in no particular order, and it'd be fine. Just jumble all the stuff around, the number 1 is number 8, who cares? And I would probably feel about the same about all of these cards. So let's move on to number 6, which I think illustrates my point to a degree. This is Iron Bundle right here. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? This is a 100 HP basic that retreats for just a single colorless. It's got this ability, Hyper Blower. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon's on your bench, you may switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Your opponent chooses the new active. If you do, discard this Pokemon and all attached cards. It's got an attack too if you care. It's water and 2 colorless for refrigerated steam. It's 80 damage. If the defending Pokemon's an evolution Pokemon, it can't attack during your opponent's next turn, which is actually not terrible. When you really think about it, you might be able to wall some stuff out with the attack, but ooh, this ability. I mean, if you know anything about me, you know that I live for a good ability. I think it's what makes Pokemon good, is when they have a good ability. And this is great. I know they get to choose the new active thing. It's not a boss's orders or anything, but it is half of an escape rope, and that could really, really mess them up in control decks, or just most decks. It doesn't even have to be in control decks. I could see some decks wanting to play this as just a 1 or 2 of, just as kind of basically play it as a trainer. In the meantime, when you're not using it, it increases damage from like Raiku's attacks and stuff like that. So altogether, I think this is really, really neat to get that thing out of active and just force him to put something else up that you can KO more easily or that you don't mind dealing with. So I don't know. I think Iron Bundle is easily one of the better cards in the entire set. As far as the future Pokemon go, it's not the last one we'll see, but again, this thing is obviously very boss, and I think it's going to see a bunch of play in decks that can't even ever attack with it. I feel like I have to apologize again that last card wasn't quite Boss's Orders. So here's Boss's Orders. This one's called Counter Catcher here at number 5. It's a trainer, just a normal old trainer. You can play it only if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent. Switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. It's just Boss's Orders, but it's not a supporter. That's unbelievable, dude. That is a freaking ridiculous card, man. You have to be behind to play it, but that ain't too hard to engineer. I mean, there's plenty of decks that already engineer situations where they're behind reversal energy decks and stuff like that. So, ooh, this actually is a set full of cards that want you to have more prize cards remaining than your opponent. There's a bunch of tricks that you can do in this set, so long as you are behind in the game. And this, to my knowledge, to my mind, is probably the best of all of those tricks in this entire set. Boss's Orders, but it doesn't take your supporter for the turn. Just an absolutely crazy Pokemon card in my estimation. I may be off on this one, but when I see Boss's Orders that allows me to still play a Professor's on my turn, I pay attention. Now up next here at number 4 is Iron Valiant EX. I don't like this as much as everyone else seems to like it, but it's still number 4 on my list, and I cut 12 cards off this list and still put it on the list, so that should tell you something. think it's a good card. It's 220 HP for a basic EX. It retreats for 2 colorless. It's got this ability, Tachyon Bits. Once during your turn, when this once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from your bench to the active spot, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. It's also got Laser Blade for Psychic colorless, 200 damage, but it can't attack during the next turn. Seems okay. Plus, we've already seen a card or two, not just in this video, but here recently, cards that are important, that care about your opponent having damage counters on certain Pokemon, like Zapdos EX, for instance. So this is just yet another way to put damage counters on certain Pokemon that you need damage counters on, for whatever reason, right? To enact tricks, mostly, and this can really help you do that. 2 damage counters is nothing to sneeze at, and obviously, you can do this over the course of multiple turns, where you switch it in, put the 2 damage counters, attack with it next turn, switch it out, switch it back in, put 2 damage counters somewhere else. It just seems like it's going to add up really quick. So even though, like I said, I'm not going to freak out about this like I've seen some people do. I've seen some people think this is the next coming of whatever you worship, but I'm not quite there yet. I do think, though, it's a very solid card. Again, good HP on a basic, very good attack, and a fantastic, ability for what it is worth. And I think it's worth a lot. That's why it's number 4. Here at number 3, yet another card that I don't like as much as everybody else, and everyone else just seems to be freaking out about it. It's going to end Pokemon, and I'm just over here like, yeah, it's a good card. It's Iron Hands EX. This, if you haven't seen it somehow yet, is 230 HP for a basic. That's a lot, but it does have a retreat cost of 4 colorless. So once its butt sits in the active spot, I don't think you're going to get its butt up anytime soon. But one way or the other, this is 2 attacks on it. It has 2 attacks. One is Arm Press for Lightning colorless. It's 160 damage. The one everyone's talking about is Lightning 3 colorless, so 4 in all, for Amp You Very Much. 120 damage. If your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out by damage from this attack, take 1 more prize card. Okay, so it does do 240 damage to Pokemon that are weak to electric, and sometimes you're going to take like 3 prize cards from that. Seems good. If it ends up knocking out a VMAX, like a Mew EX or something, you can engineer that. And you're taking 4 prize cards. You're taking 2/3 of your prize cards all in one shot. So that seems good. Obviously, against Lost Zone Box, this knocks out pretty much every important Pokemon in their deck and double prizes them for it. So, oof. It's really, really good against LZB, which is basically the best deck in the format for the last, how long now? 6 months or something like that? Long time. So, I could see it being very good against LZ, but it's going to take a lot of energy to finally be able to use this attack. But in the meantime, Lost Zone Box is not knocking it out anytime soon. That is a ton of HP on a basic. I'll give you that much. But with electric generators and Dynamotor from Flaffy and stuff, it's actually not too hard to get to the 4 energy. My concern is that you're not really putting energy on anything else. You're just trying to put it all on Iron Hands to knock stuff out. But against LZB, I do think that's going to be a worthwhile play. So I do understand why everybody loves this card or hates it, conversely. It's one or the other, right? Really no middle ground, but I guess that's where I am, right there in the middle ground. Very good in one particular matchup. I think it's going to be slightly hard to engineer knockouts with in other matchups, but again, when it does take the knockout against the EX and it gets you 3 prize cards, that's half your prize cards. You feel great about that. So obviously, Iron Hands is going to help out the Miraidon deck quite a bit, and the deck has already been performing pretty well lately. Now, all the way in here at number 2, because I really like Pokemon like this, is Xatu. This is a 100 HP stage 1, and it's got this ability. It's got Akashic Sense on it. Once during your turn, you may attach a psychic energy from your hand to one of your benched Pokemon. You attach an energy to a Pokemon this way, draw 2 cards. You can also Super Psybolt. That's 3 energy for 80 damage. You'll probably never really attack with this. I mean, it's possible you take out a Mimikyu or something, a basic Pokemon over there they haven't evolved yet, something from Lost Zone. Like, there are things you can kill with it, but I really wouldn't worry about attacking with it. I just like the ability to attach an energy and draw 2. That seems completely broken to me. We've seen Pokemon that do stuff really similar or exactly this in the past. They've always been pretty playable to the best of my knowledge, so really like this thing an awful lot. Yeah, you have to have a basic psychic energy in your hand for it to actually work, but if you're doing things right, you're doing it, right? So you got Fog Crystal in your deck too. Just play 4 of those. Get your Xatu out. And then bing bong, you're drawing extra cards every turn and you're getting an extra energy attachment. Ramp and card draw in the same card. And it takes the exact same amount of like effort as a Curlia, so I think this is going to see a ton of play. I'm not sure where it actually slots in, which is kind of the problem, how do you come down on the Curlias? How do you come down on other Pokemon or other trainers in like the Guardy deck to find a way to like get a 2-2 line into your deck? But I do think it's going to be worth finding a way to get that 2-2 line in. This is just a really, really good ability. I think that's hard to deny. But that leaves my favorite card in the entire set, the thing that I think might be the most impactful, which is really saying something considering all the cards we've already looked at. It's Roaring Moon EX. You might have guessed, it's 230 HP. That's HP on these basic EXs just gets higher every day. 230 is a lot. It's got 2 attacks on it. It retreats for 2 colorless. Now, this first attack, let me give you the second attack first, actually. The second attack is Calamity Storm. It's dark colorless for 100 damage, and you may discard a stadium in play. If you do, the attack does 120 more damage. So discard Path to the Peak, do 220. It could be worse. It seems pretty good already, but not enough for it to be number 1 on the list. The reason it's number 1 is this first attack. For dark colorless, the exact same energy cost, you get Frenzied Gouging. Knock out your opponent's active Pokemon, the best line of text in Pokemon. If your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out this way, this Pokemon does 200 damage to itself. Okay, so yeah, it's going to almost knock itself out, and if it doesn't, it's going to leave itself very open to attacks on your opponent's turn. All of this I completely understand, but it also says knock out your opponent's active Pokemon, and it's basic, right? This isn't like Giratina VMAX or anything like that, where you have to do a little bit of work to make it happen, and not necessarily. This, you just have like dark patches and stuff like that. You're throwing energy onto it, and suddenly you're killing Mew VMAXs and Gardevoirs with the second attack, if that's what you want to do, right? But you're killing literally everything else. Fully fresh Charizard, it doesn't matter, fully fresh whatever, you are killing it 100% guaranteed. Just knock out your opponent's active Pokemon. Unless it's, a Snorlax or something else that ignores effects of your opponent's attacks. It's going down, and I think that is just unbelievably powerful. We've already seen how powerful it is on Tina VMAX, right? And in this case, again, we get it on a basic, and I just think that's nutso to butso banana pudding, dude. Like, that's just ridiculous in my eyes. So I cannot wait to get my hands on Roaring Moon EX. There's a ton of cards I'm excited for in this set, but I do think this has a chance to easily be the best one. Anytime you see that line of text on a Pokemon card, especially if it's basic with high HP, rejoice is all I'm saying. There's a bunch of amazing stuff that is either definitely in this set or presumed to be in this set I didn't quite get to. Now, if you're interested, I'm also going to do a top 10 sleepers video for this set. Those are cards I don't think people are talking about enough, that I think are better than people are giving them credit for. So that's going to be in the next couple of days. Subscribe if you haven't yet. All I'm really asking for is your sub, your like, all that. All of that's free, and if you help out with that, then maybe I can monetize this content. I think I only need about 1,000 more hours of watch time, all total, lifetime, to get to monetization on this channel. I'd really like to get there, so I'd appreciate if you just sub, watch the Sleepers video when it comes out, all that. Just hang out, be part of the fam. Welcome to it, man. But in any case, I just hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, because it's actually a lot of fun to sit here and talk about Pokemon cards. It's what I like to do. It's what I get to do. Couldn't be more thankful. So I appreciate you just being here, but do all the YouTube stuff on your way out before you hit the likes, thumbs up, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Leave me a comment. How do you feel about the video, the set? What are your favorite cards? All the stuff. Engagement matters, and I do read your comments. So get down there and let me know how you feel about all the proceedings, the going-ons, and blah, blah. In any case, I think I'm donezo for this one, though. So I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, y'all. Spread love and be kind.